and welcome to another video. In today's lesson we're going to learn how to make this really cute top. But the great news is it can be made anywhere from preemie size up to larger adults. If you've made my sweaters or cardigans before, you will know how to do the top bit already. If you haven't, it's really easy to do. And the bottom has this beautiful shell detail. This could also be made into a dress. You can also add long sleeves to this project, and I will insert a video tutorial for that one. There's a free written pattern located on my website, and I will put the links that you need in the description box. The yarn that we have used today is from Fibre Lily, but I will tell you more about that in the video tutorial. So let's get started on the lesson. For our supplies, we're going to need a stitch marker. A locking stitch marker will be very handy, but if you just have a piece of yarn, that is going to work perfectly fine. This is optional, but I do recommend it. Yarn needle with a large eye for sewing in our ends. A tape measure. A pair of scissors. And a crochet hook. I will talk about the yarn in a moment. The crochet hook I'm going to be using today is a 3.5mm. I do have very loose tension, so normally with an 8-ply yarn, which is a double knit or a number 3 yarn in America, I would use a 4mm or a G size crochet hook. Because I have loose tension, I just do one size smaller. These are Clover crochet hooks. I love these Clover crochet hooks. If you'd like to grab some for yourself, there is an affiliate link in the description box of this video. If you make a purchase via that link, I get a little commission at no extra cost to you, and it helps to keep my video tutorials and written patterns free. If you're going to be using a worsted weight yarn or a 10-ply or about an Aran weight in the UK, you are going to need a 5.5mm crochet hook, which is a eye-size crochet hook, I'm pretty sure. So it'll work in either weight yarn. It'll even work in a 4-ply, which is a number 2 weight yarn in America, a 4-ply in Australia, or a fingering weight yarn. It will work in that as well. You will need to adjust the pattern. So the yarn I'm using today is so pretty. It's on a cream base. It has these beautiful colours through it. This yarn that we're using is from Fibre Lily, and Kylie from Fibre Lily is an Australian dyer from New South Wales, which is where I live. And the one we're going to be using is the Grace Harmony DK. It's approximately 100 grams, and that's about 3.5 ounces. This is 100% superwash merino, and it is a 224 metre ball. I do have a second one of these, but I'm not sure if I'm going to need it. If I do need it, I'm going to put the yarn across, the amount of yarn that I use across the screen. It is lovely. It's so squishy. So everybody is going to need different amounts of yarn depending on what size you want to make. This can be made anywhere from preemie up to adult size, and all the instructions are going to be in the written pattern. But I'm going to show you the basics on how to follow the pattern in this video tutorial. I will be making the 1-year-old size in a DK weight yarn. If you make the same size that I do in the video tutorial with a worsted weight yarn, it is going to come out one size larger. So it will probably fit about a 3-year-old, I would say. That's a guess. But what you need to do, and if you followed any of my cardigan or sweater or jumper tutorials that I've had in the last 1.5 to 2 years, you already know how to measure to make your project. So looking on the screen now, there is a photo that will show you how to measure the neckline of your garment. This can be a t-shirt. As you can see here, I've got a long sleeve top, but you can use a t-shirt, and we're going to measure the neckline of the garment. This doesn't matter if it's for a baby, a teenager, or an adult, it doesn't matter. You're going to measure that because, importantly, we want to be able to get over a head. Then you're going to look at the written pattern and compare your measurement of your neck to the measurements that is on the written pattern. If you're using a different thickness of yarn or a different size crochet hook, and we all have different tension, you may need to make the first lot of chains or the first row a couple of times. But once you know what size does what, write it down, and you can use that for other patterns, like I said, my sweater pattern and all that. Once we have completed row 1, you will be able to see if this is going to fit the size you need, as it is the opening of the sweater. You can compare this to the neck opening, like I said, and on the pattern you can see the black arrow. Ignore the red arrow because we don't need that until our next step. It is very, very easy to adjust the armhole depth, and if you look at the pattern, that's the red arrow. So if you have the neck size right, then we're good to go. So we want to measure the neck and write that down on the written pattern, and then we're also going to measure our armhole depth. If this is a really tight top on you, then you want to add a little bit to it, because you want something that's sort of loose-ish fitting. You want something that's not really tight fitting, but then you don't want something that's really baggy, otherwise your jumper's going to be way too small or way too big. We're going to measure the length from the top to the bottom of the shirt, and we're going to write that here. That's not really that important. If you can try it on as you go, that's just a guide on how long you want to make the top. So we're going to match up the neck measurement with the info below in the written pattern, and we're going to make sure that that amount of chains matches up to the measurement that's on the pattern. And that's going to make total sense when we get into the pattern. So like I said, I will be making one for about a 1 year old, 12 months. And my chain is, or my first row, is going to be about 50 centimeters long, because that is the average sort of size for a 1 year old up to about 5 years old. So you can use this same starting row for a 1 to about a 5 year old if you're using DK yarn. If you look at the written pattern, that's going to make total sense to you. You can see all the sizes that you've got there. And you're thinking, how on earth can a 1 year old sweater fit a 5 year old sweater? Well, it's all to do with the armhole depth. I'm also going to put a link for you in the description box, and that will give you armhole depth measurements. It's a website that I use when I make my patterns, and it's going to have all the measurements there for you. And you're going to look at the 1 year old. So for the 1 year old, it's about 3.75 inches. I'm not sure what that is in centimeters. But then when you look at the 5 year old size, then obviously it's a lot bigger. So we just make more rows to make a longer armhole depth. So to start our pattern, we are going to start with a slip knot. But what we want to do is leave about a 4-inch chain. You can guess it if you like. I'm just going to guess that that's 4 inches. It's just enough yarn to sew the very first row together, because we do a little bit of cheating and don't join, because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered figuring it out. So we'll do it the easy way. As I've heard someone say, I think it might be Mikey from the Crochet Crowd, fake it till you make it. So for my pattern, which is a 1 year old, using DK or a number 3 or a 8-ply yarn, I'm going to make it for a 1 year old. I need to chain 76 chains. You may have a different number of chains that you need to make. I know when I make one for myself, I'm a Australian ladies size 10, which I think is an American size 6. I use 88 chains, I think it is, let me just double check. Yeah, 88 chains, I'm just looking at the pattern. 88 chains with a DK yarn, which is this one. If I make it with worsted weight yarn, I think I use 76 chains, which is actually the same size I'm making now, but it's smaller yarn, so it's going to come out smaller. So we're going to make our chains, and like I said, I am going to make 76, and you are going to make the amount that you need that is written on the written pattern. So pause the video and I'll meet you when we have all of our chains done. I have 76 chains, and normally with a pattern you might join in the round and you've got to make sure it's not all twisted and muck around. I ain't got time for that, so I'm just going to double crochet in the 5th chain from the hook. We never count the stitch that's on our crochet hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We're going to double crochet into that, and that chains that we've skipped counts as our first double crochet and a chain 1. I know it doesn't look like that, but that's what it counts as. And then we are going to do a double crochet. I am going to work into the next 10 stitches, but if you're making a different size, then you're going to look at the ones that you need to make. And I forgot to say before, you'll notice where it says chains and you've got the first size and then you've got a whole heap of other numbers in brackets. The size you're going to use, so let's say you chose, I chose 76, that is the 4th amount of numbers. When we go along to the written instructions on row 1, and you can see that it says you've got to do double crochet into the next 4, and then there's a bracket, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 chains. You're going to say, if you're doing the 4th number, which is what I'm doing, 76 chains, you're going to go to the 4th number, which is in where it says 4, 6, 8, 10. So the 4th number across is number 10. Whatever number you picked out of the first lot of numbers where it says chain so many, you're going to pick the same number that corresponds with that. So if you chose the 6th number across, you're going to do the 6th number across where it says to do so many double crochets. And we're going to do that across the whole pattern. So if you've never read a written pattern before and you're thinking, why are there so many numbers? Then that's why, because you're only going to pick one of those numbers because it corresponds to the size that you're making. It's instead of writing, so this pattern does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sizes. So it's got one pattern instead of me writing out 8 patterns, which would take me like 12 months instead of a couple of days. That's why it's written like that. And you'll see a lot of patterns written like that if it's something that can be made in multiple sizes. Okay, so stop chatting. And so I need to double crochet into the next 10, but you may have a different amount of numbers. But that's fine, you just do what you need to do. And I know I talk a lot in video tutorials, but each video tutorial has to have all the information for someone that's maybe never made a project like this before. So if you've made something like this before, you're going, I already know that, will you stop talking? But if you haven't, I don't want to miss any information out. Because this could be the first time that you've come across one of my patterns, and if I don't tell you all the information that you need, you're probably going to hate it, because you'll be like, I don't know what I'm doing, this is too hard, and you'll just won't watch the video tutorial. So I need to do the next 10. So you skip the first 2, so that's a chain, and then that one, you skip those, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then on the written pattern it says to do a double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet in the next chain. And that is our increase for this pattern. So in the next chain, we're going to do that. We're going to double crochet, chain 1. Don't do your chain 1 too tight, because it is going to be the space that we crochet into on the next row. So we're going to do another double crochet in the very same stitch that we just did that previous double crochet. And you can see there that we've got an increase because we've got 2 stitches and a chain 1 in the same space. Double crochet into the next 24 stitches, which is for the size I'm making. If you're making a different size, then just crochet the amount that you need to crochet. So 24. I'm not going to film the whole 24, so pause the video, and when you have your amount of stitches done, I will meet you ready for the next part of the instructions. Pause the video and I'll see you there. I just crocheted my 24 stitches, our increase is there. And I've done my 24 stitches, and now it is time for another increase. And do you remember what that was? It was a double crochet, a chain 1 and a double crochet all in the same stitch. Going to double crochet, and for me it's the next 10 stitches. You may have a different number. And then we're going to work a double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet for our increase into the next chain. So all in that same chain. Chain 1 and double crochet. Double crochet into the next, for me it's 24, and you may have a different number. And what that should be, if we've done our chain right, it should be the remaining chains that we have on our first row that we did. So we're going to double crochet all the way to the end. We don't do an increase at the end, because when we join it, the stitches that we skipped at the beginning is our increase for that one there. So double crochet all the way to the end, and double check that you have the amount that you need. I need 24, but you may need a different number. Pause the video and I'll meet you when we're ready to join. So I'm up to the end and I need to have 2 more stitches, and I don't. Apparently I cannot count to 76. I've only got 74 chains. Ah dear. But I have this long tail here, so I'm going to add in 2 more chains. I don't do this very often, but when I do, I'm glad that I left a long tail. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the chain, the last chain. We're going to add, so what do I need? I need 2 more chains. So we're going to go pull up. So we're going to do 1 chain, 2 chain, and then we're going to go pull that through again, and that just becomes our new slip knot. So pull that, and I now have 2 more chains. What was I saying before? Fake it till you make it. You are not going to know. And actually looking at that, I can't even tell myself. That's awesome. Go in there. So that was my 75th stitch, chain, sorry. And that was my 76th chain. And now I have the correct amount of double crochets that I need on this side. See, look, you can't even tell. I haven't done that for a long time. Normally I just rip it out and start again, but I wasn't going to this time. We now need to join this long thing into a circle so that we have the neckline of our jumper. And this is where we're going to measure against the written pattern. So I'm just going to scroll up on my written pattern, and mine needs to be about 50 centimeters. And I'm crossing fingers and toes right now to make sure this is 50 centimeters. And don't forget that the neckline will stretch, so you can stretch it out a little bit. So unstretched, completely unstretched, this is 42 centimeters long. If I stretch it a little bit, it will actually stretch out to 50 centimeters. Yay! Gold star for the lady talking on the video. So now we are going to join this together. You have no idea what it feels like when you when you're going to measure something on screen, hoping that it's going to be the measurement that you're telling everyone, and then it really is the actual measurement. And if it ever isn't the measurement, you don't actually see it on the tutorial, because I edited it out and start again. We're now going to join to the third chain of the four chains that we skipped. If you can't figure it out, the easiest way to do it is go to the top. We want this chain at the top here, so this one right here. That's our chain 1 for our chain 1 space. So we want to join to the one that's next to that. And that will actually be our third chain up. So we've got, let's see if I can point with my pointy stick. This chain here, so this is the double crochet. That chain here is our chain for our chain 1 space. And then this yellow one you've got here is the chain that we're going to make a slip stitch into. And then we're going to pull that through. What we want to do now is make sure that is not twisted. If it's twisted now, you will not be able to untwist on any other row because we've already joined it. This is where we grab our stitch marker. This is to remind us, I'm just going to pull this out. This is to remind us to double crochet into the top of the chain 3 when we come back around. This will be on every row. If you accidentally miss this stitch here, which is a slip stitch, if you pull it too tight it disappears. If you accidentally miss that, as you go around one of your sections, so this section here, which, what is the back, I think it's the back or the front, that will gradually get smaller and your top of your project is going to look really weird and not fit you at all. So you just want to make sure, I mean, you could remember that easily, but if you're watching TV or something, not paying attention like I do, it's very easy to skip it. And you don't actually see it once you've skipped it. It's not like you can look back and go, oh no, I've skipped a stitch. It kind of disappears. So row 2, we're going to slip stitch into the chain 1 space. And we are going to do a chain 4. This counts as the very first stitch and a chain 1 space. If you do a alternative double crochet at the beginning of your rows, you're most welcome to use that now instead of the chain 3. So you're going to do the chain 3, which is our very first stitch, and that 4th chain, which is another chain, is our chain 1, and we're going to double crochet into the chain 1 space. When we do that double crochet there, sometimes we double crochet over this very first stitch, and that little stitch there disappears. You need to take note and make sure you double crochet in that first stitch. This will happen every time we do an increase, which is what we just did with the stitches in the chain 1 space. Sometimes you can double crochet over that. Just make sure that you've got that stitch. Again, if you don't, it will get smaller. Actually, it probably won't increase. I don't think it'll get smaller. It won't increase, and one of your sides is going to be off. And that one you probably won't see either because you've actually crocheted over the stitch. So we're just crocheting across until we get to our next chain 1 space. If you can't see the chain 1 spaces, maybe use some stitch markers. So every time you do an increase, put a stitch marker in the chain 1 space that you just made. And when you get to it, it'll stand out more. Sometimes it kind of does blend in a little bit. Yeah, see, I didn't even know that was there. It's actually just here. It does blend in, but you'll notice there's a bigger gap here than there is there. So if you had stitch markers handy, you can grab them and just place them like that after you've made them. So when you come along, you see it like that. So we're going to double crochet. And I'm going to show you what I meant by crocheting accidentally over that stitch. So we're going to do a double crochet and a chain 1 and a double crochet all in the same space. If you accidentally double crochet over that stitch, this is what it's going to look like. And you're going to think, if this is all the way over like that, you might think that your next stitch is this little pinky orange one there. And you're going to double crochet in there. And you can kind of see there that it doesn't really stand out that you've accidentally skipped that one because you've crocheted over the top of it. But if you pull this back across, now you can really tell that you haven't crocheted into it because there's this big gap in here. See how there's a big gap there and there isn't over here? That's because we've missed that stitch. So if you pull that out, just give it a gentle tug that way and then put that back in. And what it is it's the second double crochet of our increase. Ooh, ugh, more thumbs. It's this stitch here that you've crocheted over. So you can put your stitch marker in there, and that reminds you where the chain 1 space is. I don't normally need them because I can feel it as I go along. Like I feel with these fingers that there's a chain 1 space there. I'm not saying I never do it because, let's face it, I'm human and it's not how I roll. I'm always making mistakes. So again, we're just going to double crochet across, and I think this is where we've got lots of stitches. I think we're on like the back section, and we are. We're going to double crochet all the way across until we get to our next chain 1 space. Pause video and I'll meet you there. When we get to the next chain 1 space, we are going to work a double crochet, a chain 1 and a double crochet. Oops. Crochet, chain 1 and double crochet, and it's all into the chain 1 space. And then we're going to double crochet across, making sure we don't skip that very first stitch there. If you're using stitch markers in your chain 1 space, you want to place one into the chain 1 space there. I'll do that just so you can see what you need to do. As you get more rows, it'll start creating a shape rather than just a big blob of crochet. And the chain 1 spaces will start to stand out a lot more. So we're going to double crochet across until we get to our next chain 1 space. So we're on the arm section here, so it's not as far as the other one, so I'll just keep the video going. Where is it? It's coming up soon. Here we go. So we're going to work a double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet, and that is telling you what to do, but I'm not actually doing it. Chain 1 and double crochet, all in that same chain 1 space from the previous row. You can see now that they're starting to stack up and they're a little bit easier to see. Don't forget, you want to make sure you grab that first stitch there. We're going to crochet across, and I think we're up to the last part now. Just make sure that's not twisted. Nope. Yeah, we are. And you're going to need to make sure it doesn't twist on this row when we join as well, because it can actually twist there. Crochet all the way across, and I'll meet you when we are ready to join. So I'm up to where we need to join, and mine was actually twisted, not when I joined the last row, but this bit was like that. And if you pick that up where you're supposed to, it doesn't look twisted here, but it is. You can't untwist that. So you're going to make sure better if we lay it down. Make sure that it's not twisted. It's not going to sit too flat, but it'll sit flat enough so you know it's not twisted. And then pick that up. Okay, oh, so remember how I said we're going to forget to crochet into that stitch? I totally was, because I was about to join it. We need to crochet into that stitch, so remove that stitch marker and crochet in that stitch. We're going to join to the top of the chain 3, which is the beginning of the row. If you can't figure out where the third chain is, remember what I said, you go one chain from the stitch, which is the space, the chain space we need, and the next chain is the one we're going to join into. We're going to grab our stitch marker and we're going to mark that stitch. Today's video should be titled All About the Noises. I just sneezed, which we won't know because I would have edited it out. The microwave beeped, my phone went off, and now there's a plane. Can you hear I don't know if you can hear the plane, but I can. Into the next one. I do have my window open, that's why. Slip stitch into the chain 1 space, and then we're going to chain up 3, or an alternative double crochet. Do the chain, so that's 4 chains, and then double crochet in the same space. This row that we're on now is row 3, and it's exactly the same as row 2. We're going to double crochet in our double crochets. When we get to our chain 1 space, we're going to do our increase. If you can't remember, you can see it on the row below. It's a double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet, all into the same chain 1 space. We're going to double crochet across till we get to our next chain 1 space. Again, we're going to work our increase. And we repeat this all the way around. You will have 4 increases, even though I've only got 3 stitch markers there. I only marked the first 2. You've got 4 increases and it will create that shape. So the middle bit obviously is where your head goes. And then this part will get gradually wider. So when you fold it down, at the moment it doesn't look like a jumper at all, but that's the shape it's going to create, and then that's going to gradually get wider, and that will create the top part of our jumper. I call it a jumper. Americans may call it a sweater or a sloppy joe. I think English may call it a pullover. Some people call it a jersey. We're all different. What do you call it where you come from? I call it a jumper. But I once said jumper and someone said, "What's that? Is that a frog?" And I'm like, no, it's something that you wear. How do you know how far to go? Because now we're just going to repeat the previous row. How do you know how far to go? Well, you're going to go to that link that I told you about. It is in the description box below the video tutorial. And you can see what size you need to make. Or you're going to go with the measurement that you took off the t-shirt or the garment that you used to take your measurements. And if you did what I said before, you would have written it on the video. You wouldn't have written it on the video tutorial, that's impossible. You would have wrote it on the written pattern, or you would have wrote it down somewhere. So what you need to do is keep crocheting until, so I need to make mine 3.75 inches, but we're going to go a little bit smaller than our actual measurement because crochet stretches, and the next row after we finish this bit is the joining row where we create our armholes, and it does add 1 row to the measurement. So this needs to be 3.75, so that's about there. I need to crochet until it's that long. Obviously I've got a lot more to go. But I'm only going to crochet until it is 3 inches long, because one of my rows is about 1/2 inch. So if I crochet until it's 3 inches, anybody want to volunteer to hang out my washing? Can you hear that beeping? It's ready. I'm going to crochet until my pit here is 3 inches, because when I add my joining row, because my row is 1/2 inch wide, it's actually going to make it 3.5 inches with the joining row for my armhole depth. And then crochet stretches, so it's going to stretch enough to fit the 3.75 inches. So to work out how much you need to make this, you need to measure how big your row is. Mine's double knit yarn, so it's a lot smaller than if I've used worsted weight. It's about 1/2 inch. So I need to make this 1/2 inch smaller than the armhole measurement that I need. I hope that makes sense. Because if you make this the armhole depth that you need, which is 3.75 for me, once I add on my joining round, it's going to make it 4 inches, and that's going to be too big. It's okay if the child can grow into it, that's perfectly fine. It's going to be a little bit big when they first wear it, but they can grow into it a little bit. But if it's for an adult, which is not going to grow anymore, then you're not going to grow into it, are you really? So you will need it to be the size that you took rather than a little bit bigger. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I've got verbal diarrhea today. Pause the video, and in the next part we will have our top part of our sweater done, or the yoke, and we will be ready to join. I have the top part of my jumper finished, and this measures 7.5 centimeters or 3 inches. So don't forget, when I add my, so it's 3 inches, and when I add my joining round, it's going to go to 3.5 inches. So you're going to want it 1 row smaller than what you need your measurement. Don't forget it's going to stretch a little bit too, so you can adjust that. And we're now up to creating the armholes. At the moment it's just this, I don't even know what shape you would even call that. It's not joined, there's no armholes, it's just a round thing. So to create our armholes, I've joined and I'm ready to start the new row. Ready to start the new round. My stitch marker was just marking the very first stitch of the round that we need to remember to crochet into. I've removed all my other stitch markers. We're going to chain 3. We're going to double crochet into the chain 1 space. Depending on what size you're making, if you're making a baby, a child, a teenager or an adult, will depend on how many chains we're about to do. If you're making a baby size, you want to chain 3. If you're making a child size, you want to chain 4. If you're making a teenager size, chain 5. And if you're making an adult size, chain 6. If you're making an adult's size, I would say large, I would chain 7, and then anything bigger than that I would chain 8. What this does, it creates the space underneath the armhole that you need, like the side of your body sort of thing. It's going to create that space. So I'm making a baby, so I'm making 3 chains. We're going to skip the next section of double crochets. So when we look at our work, you can see there's a whole heap of double crochets across here, and our increase is over there. So we're going to double crochet into the next chain 1 space. So skipping all these double crochets and crocheting into the next chain 1 space, which is there. And you've just created your armhole. If you just flip that back over, you can see we now have an armhole. We're going to double crochet into the chain 1 space, and we're going to do the same amount of chains that we did before. So for me it was 3. If it was a child it was 4, a teenager 5, an adult 6. If you're making the large size it was a 7, and then if you're making any larger size than that I would suggest 8. Whatever you did on the previous armhole. We're going to skip all these double crochets and find the next chain 1 space, which for me is just there, and we're going to double crochet into that chain 1 space. If you've made any of my other sweaters or cardigans or anything, I think this is slightly different under the armhole, but it's the same result. We are now going to crochet, double crochet all the way across, and then when we get to the end it's going to be ready to join. So I'll meet you when we're over there, so just double crochet all the way across. Pause video and I'll meet you when we are ready to join. When we get to the end, this stitch marker was marking that stitch what we didn't want to forget about, but it's not there anymore, so I can remove that stitch marker because our chain 3 is here. It's starting in a different spot now. So we're going to join into the top of that chain 3. We're going to chain 3, and again, if you've got an alternative double crochet, you're allowed to do that if you want to. And now we have an armhole. You can see there we've created an armhole, and on the other side. So we've done our chain 3, and now we want to double crochet in each stitch and chain around on this round. If you want to work into each chain, you can. I did do that with the other version that I showed you, the pinky coloured one. Or you could just crochet around the chain. It's whatever you find easier. I think on most of my video tutorials I've just crocheted around the chain because it's quicker. So you would just go into the big space here, like the armhole space, with your crochet hook, and then work the same amount of stitches that you made chains. So I made 3, so I need to do 3 double crochet into that big space there. Or you can work into the chain, which I think I'm going to do again on this one because it did look a little bit neater. I'm sure you can't really tell once you're wearing it, but I just liked the way it looked. So you're just working into the chain like you would normally. And that way I think it spaces the crochets out better rather than them all sort of just clumped together. Like I said, it's probably not going to notice once you're wearing it, and once we add the armhole and everything like that. So kookaburras. They're close to the house somewhere, but I'm not sure where. Normally they sit in a tree right outside our bedroom window. And for a while there they were doing that at 5 AM. I don't get up at 5 AM for no one. Unless I'm catching a plane, which isn't that often. So we're going to double crochet around. When you get to the other armhole, work it the same as that first one, and I'll meet you when we are ready to join. We are back around and we're ready to join. We're going to join to the top of the chain 3, or the top of the first stitch. Oops. And now what we want to do is repeat the last round. We're going to repeat this. If you're doing a baby size like I am, you're going to repeat it for 1 inch. If you're making a child size, you're going to make it for 1.5 inches. A teenager size, 2 inches, and an adult size, 3 inches from the armhole. Or if it's the adult size, it'll be 3 inches from the bottom of your bust. The reason that we do that is on a child one, it's probably not going to make any difference, because on the smaller sizes you don't need to worry about the bust area. But on an adult size one, if we start adding the pattern straight away, the pattern is going to be added straight across like the middle of your bust going across, and it doesn't look very nice. It kind of draws attention to that area, and it just looks a bit strange. I've had people commented on a jumper that I've got, and these are designers, not just random people walking past. And I did change colour on this row, and like mid bust. I actually changed colour the row before, I think. And someone said to me, quite a few people have said, you know, when you're changing colour, don't make it sort of right in the middle of your bust line, because it looks a bit strange. If you want to do that, you can start the shell pattern now, but if you don't want it, if it's an adult size and you don't want it to be, yeah, right on that bust line, I'll see if I can remember to insert the photo of the garment that I'm talking about. I don't know if I've got one on of me wearing it, but you'll see it if I can find the photo. So like I said, you can start it now if it's for a child, but if it's for an adult, I would just crochet a bit more so that it's not in that certain spot. So like I said, we're going to do 1 inch from the armhole. So you're going to measure from this little bit here. That's already like 1/2 inch. So you're going to measure like that. So I've already got about 1/2 inch. So for the baby one, I need to do 1 inch. So really I only have to do another round. But that's all in the written pattern. If you cannot remember what I'm talking about, it is all in the written pattern. And again, the link for that will be in the description box. So we're just going to repeat the last round, and it was a chain 3 or your alternative double crochet. And now we're just going to double crochet in each stitch around. We don't have to worry about crocheting into any chains because we've already done that on the previous round. And you can see that down there. We're just going to double crochet all the way around, and I'll meet you when we are ready to join. So I've joined my round, and it's just a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3, and that should give me 1 inch from the armhole, or about 1 inch. Yep, that's pretty good. So that's me done. You will have a different measurement if you're making a different size. You're going to notice that it is a different colour from the first part of the video. That is because I've just used the beginning of the video from the very first tutorial that I did, and I will put a link in for you up here of which one that was. The top half is the same. I'm making the same size as I did last time, but as you know, you can make them in all different sizes. And I'm just going to do the bottom half of the garment in a different stitch. So we're using this gorgeous yarn from Fibre Lily, and this is the Bella Harmony DK base. And all the details are there. You can find Kylie's shop on Etsy. She's also on Instagram, and pretty sure that also on Facebook if you want to follow her. And that's Fibre Lily. This is really, really beautiful. I love this yarn. I love all of Kylie's yarn, and I have quite a collection. What we want to do is make sure the last round of our crochet here is in multiples of 4. If it's not, then you can add or start again. If it's not, you can add or subtract a couple of stitches, and I would suggest adding them under the arm section, which is on this side, just on the side. But we need multiples of 4 so that we can fit in our beautiful pattern. And when I count mine, I have 1 extra stitch, and it's that one there, so it's my last stitch. So I'm not going to worry about that. I am just going to ignore that there's 1 extra stitch. When you've finished your garment, you are not going to notice. And what I can do is even just pretend that this chain 3 and that is the same stitch. It is really not going to notice. But like I said, if you want to make it perfect, you can add or subtract a stitch, or however many stitches you need to make it, so it's a multiple of 4. And that means when you count around it, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can just count your stitches and divide it by 4. So I've only got 1 there, so that's not going to worry me. You could just do a decrease on the last stitch there, and that will make it multiples of 4, but you know, I'm not going to stress over the little things. So you've got, I need to do a chain 3. So far I've got chain 2 there, I think. Yes. So you need chain 3. You could use a standing double crochet or some alternative double crochet if you've been using that throughout your project. And we're going to work 4 double crochet in the same stitch. And altogether we're going to have 5 stitches in that same one. So you've got your first stitch, which for me was a chain 3, and then you've got 4 double crochets. We're going to skip 3 stitches and work 5 double crochet into the next stitch. So 1, 2, 3, and then 5 double crochet in the next one. Again, we're going to do that again. We're going to skip 3 stitches, and then the next one we're going to work 5 double crochet. So 1, 2, 3 in the next stitch, 5 double crochet. And we're going to repeat this all the way around. Skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. In the next one, 5 double crochet. And that is our repeat for this round, and we're going to go all the way around, and we're going to pause the video, and when I come back we will be ready to join. When we get to the end, we are going to join to the top of the chain or the top of the stitch that you did. Like if you have an alternative double crochet, you're going to join to the top. And if it's a chain 3, you're joining into the 3rd chain, and we're going to join with a slip stitch. We're going to slip stitch until we get to the 3rd stitch of our first 5. And that is going to be the middle stitch, because we've got 5 stitches, so the 3rd one is our middle stitch. So we're just going to slip stitch across to the next, to that 3rd stitch. What's that? That's the 2nd, 1, 2, and that, yep, we're in our 3rd. We're going to work a chain 3 or an alternative double crochet, and we're going to work 4 double crochet in the 3rd stitch, which is what we just slip stitched into. 3 and 4. Oops. Into the next shell that we have here, we have 5 stitches. I was just counting those to make sure there was 5. Yep, because we all know that no one's perfect and there could have been 4 or 3 or even 2. We're going to find the 3rd stitch, and if you look at it, you will be able to just see that the top of here, that top bit right there, is the 3rd, should be the 3rd stitch, but you can count, so 1, 2 and 3. As you go along, you'll just be able to see where you need to go rather than actually have to count it, and you'll notice if there's not 5, because it'll just look different. 1, 2 and then 3, so that's a top double crochet. Work 5 double crochet into there, so that's 4 and 5. I love all the different colours in this yarn, it's so pretty. And we're going to work this all the way around. We're going to look at our next one, find the 3rd stitch, so 1, 2 and 3, work 5 double crochet into the top of that. And we're going to repeat this all the way around, and I'll meet you when we are ready to join. When we come back around, we are going to join to the top of the first stitch. Oops, all thumbs. There we go. And we're just going to repeat the last round for as many rounds as we like. That is looking so cute. So I'm going to keep going. I don't know how much my yarn is going to give me, but I will need a little bit of yarn left over for the edging around the sleeves, and we'll see what happens. And we can maybe put an edging around here, but it may not need one because it does look very cute. Yeah, so I'll need enough for my sleeves and enough for around the neck. You could add long sleeves to this if you like. I will put in a video just here that shows you how to add sleeves. It is an adult tutorial, but it's exactly the same principle. It's just worked on a smaller scale if you've made the smaller size. So pause the video, and in the next one you'll see how many rounds I have done. I have finished mine now, so all we need to do is finish off and sew in our ends. And I'm going to insert the footage from the very first tutorial I did that shows you how to crochet around the arm opening and also the neck. Don't forget you can add long sleeves if you like to, and there is a video, if you click just in the corner here, there is a video there for you, and that will show you how to add long sleeves. And we're going to go to the top of the jumper. We have the end that we need to sew in, so we can do that now. I want to sew it into the chain here. Just want to find somewhere to anchor that so that it doesn't look like we joined it. Can't even tell we joined it, can you? That was a pretty good joining there, if I do say so myself. So through that loop and then turn it to the back, and then we can sew in our ends. I'm going to skip the last loop that it just came out of and then go back again. So that's sewn in, and we want to grab our yarn, and now we're just going to work the edging. I'm just going to join it in the same place, or roughly the same place. When we work our edging, we're going to work between the vertical bars there. Those little, I'm going to work into the middle of that stitch. If you've made any of my cardigans or jumpers, then you would have already known how to do this, because this is the method we use on that one. And we're going to single crochet all the way around. We're going to go in the same stitch and make a single crochet, and then single crochet in each stitch. If we go into here, it's going to pull up a big hole. If we go into the two vertical stitches we have there, in between them, it creates a nice edge. I'm going to work this all the way across until we get to the increase section, which is over here. So continue on until we get to the increase here. When we get to the increase, you've got the two stitches, one there, one there. We're just going to do a single crochet decrease. So we're going to go into the first one, pull up a stitch, into the second one there, and pull up a stitch, pull up a loop. What am I saying? Pull up a stitch. Pull up a loop, got 3 loops, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. And we're going to do this every time we get to the increase. So we're going to do another one there. So just single crochet across. until we get to the next one, and I'll show you how to do it again. Go in there, pull up a loop, go into the next one. Yep, that's right. Let's pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all three. And we're going to repeat this all the way around. Altogether we'll have 4 decrease sections, because we've got 4 increase sections on the top section. So yeah, that's a lot of sections. Pause the video and I'll see you in just a minute. When we get to the end, we're going to join to the very first single crochet and then pull through a loop, cut off our yarn, pull through, and we can sew that end in as well. I'm going to do that off camera because you know how to sew ends in. We're now going to go to the armhole and we're going to work a round of single crochet. Join your yarn anywhere down the bottom here, and I'm going to go between the vertical bars as well. And we're going to single crochet in the same stitch and single crochet around the opening. This is pretty easy because we are just single crocheting into stitches. It's just down the bottom there that it gets a little bit fiddly. But work your way around and I'll meet you when we're ready to join. So I'm coming around. This is where I started the row, and I just thought I'd show you what I'm doing here because it's a little bit tricky. It's not easy to see what you need to do. I'm going to go into the top there. So what's that? That's the chain of the increase at the top of the jumper. So I'm going to crochet in there. I think that was the chain 1 that we just crocheted into. And then you can see here there's not really a stitch to go into, so just put it where you think you need to put a stitch. Going into the vertical bars there. And that one. And then join. And oops, I've gone into the second stitch, joining into the first single crochet. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm shaking my hook. It kind of like goes through a little bit easier. When your stitches are a bit smaller, it helps. Cutting our yarn off. I'm playing yarn chicken, by the way. So I'm running out of yarn pretty quick. Got to try and get the other sleeve out of that. I think I'll make it. But yeah, we'll see. So then do exactly what we did on this sleeve onto the other sleeve.